I'm Jeff Lund. This is the Mediocre Alaskan Podcast. I have stopped doing introductions just because, when you are listening to a podcast and there's like 2 minutes of, hey, I'm sponsored by this person, or hey, we got a show and this is what we're going to talk about. So Chuy is here and we're just going to start. What's going on, man?
What's going on, man?
So you and I were talking earlier today, texting back and forth about self-awareness. And then I posed you a question. I said, what's the difference between self-awareness and virtue signaling, which you can actually, I think it's not really a versus, but people will use self-awareness as something to virtue signal to their friends about, that they have some sort of political or moral superiority because, oh, I'm just more self-aware than I was before. So kind of break down what we talked about earlier as far as like the difference or what self-awareness means to you.
Sure. So you want me to tackle the self-awareness versus the virtue signaling?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was putting a little bit of thought into the virtue signaling. I think, as you know, we live in an age where social media is a huge influence in what we do and what we don't do, right? And I think, unfortunately, we're driven to post stuff that are essentially highlights of our day-to-day stuff, whether it's at the gym or having a great time, but we fail to post some of the negative things. Of course, I mean, nobody wants to show the world that all the negative things that are happening to them, right? And where I think virtue signaling falls into place is whatever the socially acceptable thing or social behaviors that we're seeing, whether it's being green or following a political how would I say a theory or what have you, right? Versus where I think self-awareness is more of a taking a step outside of, I guess, your body and doing a whole personal inventory on what's actually going on and not bullshitting yourself, right? Where we often get caught up doing that on social media. I'm guilty of it myself and trying to do a better job of it. So I think those are the big difference there is not bullshitting yourself, right?
I really like that personal inventory thing. And I a couple of weeks ago, I talked about it on the podcast, and I've been thinking a lot about it the last couple of months, really how difficult it is to keep up this idea in people's heads, specifically with being like outdoorsing, that I fail so often. I don't catch fish all the time. I'm not fishing all the time. And I think it's almost just as important for me to broadcast when I'm not successful, maybe even more than it is if I am successful, because I don't want anybody to have the idea that I think that I'm a great outdoorsman. I don't think I've ever said that I'm a great outdoorsman, and I don't want people to think that I am based on the stuff that I post. So it's actually so much more relaxing and relieving that I don't have to live up to some impossible standards where the only time I ever go out is when I'm successful.
Sure.
And every time I go out, I'm going to be successful. And if I tell anybody that I'm going to go fishing or that I'm going to go hunting, I'm going to get something. And that doesn't happen. So when you take that person, why am I doing this? Am I doing this just so that other people can think that I'm an outdoor badass? Then what's my pleasure in it? I'm trying to impress people. No one really cares.
Right. It's about. I listened to that podcast. It was like 5 of them or so. I think you were doing a review of the day and how crappy of a day that you've had. I remember that one. But yeah, I think you talked a little bit about. You might have said it or not, but I think you mentioned the phrase, falling in love with the process, right? Where people that go to visit Alaska, like myself, almost 2 years ago, I was just in awe of, every day. We were there for a week, but just being in the Pacific and watching eagles fly, and you kind of took it for granted, right?
Yeah.
Where we were just so focused on the reward of catching a fish, right, yourself, right? But to me, I thought it was a great time just failing and not good, just a fight, right? There's a beauty in the fight. I can kind of correlate that to, well, I guess I can correlate a lot with Olympic weightlifting, right? I mean, you've done a little bit of CrossFit yourself, and there's Olympic weightlifting and CrossFit, but you see a lot of people on social media, again, going back to social media, all they post is this big PRs, right? But the majority of weightlifting is failed. The majority of the lifts, Brennan, I get a review from him. He sends me how he felt that day, and he does a pretty good job of that. And most of the time, it's fails, right? Maybe once a week he's had a really good day and very successful, but I think he's grown. I mean, he's been doing it for 4 years now, and he's finally coming along to realize that to really fall in love with the process.
Yeah, failing is most of it, and the reaction to it is where you build all the attributes that you want. If you want to be, a good friend, if you want to be a good boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, dad, whatever, it's all about reacting to things and growing and having the opportunity to be, to help others. I think back to that self-awareness too, it's taking that self-inventory and also looking at how you're interacting with other people. And it's not just a matter of, well, you have to accept me for who I am, and you're going to be loud and obnoxious, and you're going to be a jerk.
Yeah,
you're a jerk. You're a jerk. You're not. That's
it
just
really
not
is. Yeah, that's what you are.
Use that as an excuse to get out. When people use those qualifiers, well, not to be mean, but no, you're being a jerk. You shouldn't say it.
Yeah.
So, talk a little bit about that self-awareness in relationship to how you treat other people in your interactions with others.
Well, I think going back to how we even got into the subject of the self-awareness, I think it was your penultimate podcast. I think it was episode like 94 or something like that, where you were talking about you just finished off sending off probably your best graduating class, right? I think it was 2 episodes ago or so, when you were talking about giving a exit speech to them or some tip of advice, and you mentioned work on self-improvement, or I forget what the other one was, and that's where I shot you a text and said, what about self-awareness of doing this personal inventory of where you are now? It's like you just graduated from high school, and I touched on 5 points is like who you are as a person, right? What you currently can't do, where your values are, and then the other one is obviously where you need improvement, right? So I think those are the 5 key features of doing a self-test on whatever it is that you do, whether it's you're going to be an engineer or what have you. Me as a business owner / coach, and it's something that you have to do on a day-to-day basis, just sharpening that and cultivating it every day.
Yeah. The one that I liked a lot about that is where your values come from. And if you look at the types of businesses that you want to support, people go to Whole Foods because of their business model, their business values. People also go there again to virtue signal that I'm the type of
that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
So you have the people who legitimately do that for the right reasons. And this is just to judge anybody who goes to Whole Foods or anything, because I'm just as guilty of supporting certain things or doing things to show other people that I'm this type of person. So it's, again, that's that self-inventory.
Yeah.
But like the podcasts that I listen to and the businesses I like to support, it's because they care about people. And that's the core of it. And you can just tell that this isn't just a way that I can make money. Yeah. The goal is not to have so I can have this business. The goal is to help people.
Right.
And that you want to be around people with those sort of values, and those values stand out. And you formulate your own value system based on, you know, your home life growing up, and then when you become an adult, it's all right, I have all this information and I'm going to make these decisions based on the information I have and build those values. And I think that's so important.
Yeah. And I think it's important too. I mean, I don't know what the right answer is on how often you should, you know, take a step back and do a personal inventory. But for me, it's on a day-to-day basis on, you know, I get so caught up in, you know, what's the next move with the gym or this and that. And I get stressed out on, certain things aren't going a certain way, but then I take a look at myself back in monitoring myself on like, what's the reason why you got into this? And, you know, me personally, the reason why I decided to open up a gym was because it's been almost 10 years when I first got introduced into CrossFit. I just recently graduated from college. I was working, like 60, 70 hours a week and wasn't spending enough time with my wife and letting myself go physically, mentally. And luckily for me, I found CrossFit. A friend of mine introduced me to it and I got hooked on it. And here, you know, 18 months later, it completely changed my whole outlook in life. I'm more positive, just felt physically better and said like, and I told myself, like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life is like share this experience to everybody else. And again, getting so caught up in the just day-to-day stuff on, you know, running a business and forget what the reason is. And I think I like you said, supporting like-minded businesses like that too.
Yeah. It's strange when your high school goes really fast and the first couple years out of college goes really, really fast, and then you settle in.
Yeah.
And sometimes that settling in can be pretty bad because that idea of I'll figure it out happens really quickly once you graduate high school because you have to figure something out.
Yeah.
Then after high school, if you go to college, then you have to figure something out to get a job. But then once you kind of have a job, you don't really have to figure anything out anymore. So you really have to kind of push yourself to keep moving, keep growing, keep learning. Otherwise, you know, you end up, you know, using things as excuses for, you know, you get tricked into living kind of a boring life, and that's kind of scary.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people get caught in this like sleepwalk through their, once you settle in, like you said, where you need to figure it out, and you've got a 9 to 5, and people get caught up just sleepwalking through the work and get comfortable and just kind of go into autopilot, and you get caught up in not being honest with himself.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
What's the difference between taking your inventory and being honest with yourself and developing not a hatred for yourself, but being like hurting your self-esteem? There's a difference between positive self-talk and being overcritical of yourself. So how do you self-assess that and then not get too negative?
I think sometimes I think what would help with that is your circle of friends and asking them to be honest with you. I think a lot of us don't take feedback very well, whether it's positive, obviously, sorry, negative feedback very well. And I think we should utilize that to our advantage, right? And sorry, what was the other question? Personal inventory and
you're taking your personal inventory and not being so negative with you, but still holding yourself accountable.
right. Well, I mean, I've said it before, and I think I've said it in your second podcast. I think that's when we were invited. And there's really only two things that you can control in life is your activity and your attitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I got lost.
I caught myself once. I was talking to, I think it was my freshman class maybe, or high school kids, and I was telling them that just what a moron I was and what an idiot I was, and I was kind of making a joke, but I realized that I have a positive personal view of I think of myself positively. So if I do negative self-talk, it's because it's kind of to redirect myself to the type of man that I want to be and know that I can be. I have a positive mental image of myself.
Right.
Whereas high school kids might not. And so then they're not necessarily, some of them might not be joking around when they say, oh, well, I'm just no good. Well, I'm such a moron. They actually believe it. I don't believe that. I just believe that I had this instance that was stupid. So my self-talk is negative, but it's not the same. So how do you encourage people to hold themselves accountable and not feel that worthlessness and be motivated going forward?
I think community comes into play with every day that they come in here. The community here assists them in uplifting them to continue to come back.
You need people to talk this stuff through with. I mean, the world is such a confusing, difficult place to be, and having like-minded people who aren't just going to, validate, oh, that's great, oh, it's fine, you're fine, but they're going to challenge you to be better. I think that's one of the things that we're really lacking, and which is why we're so medicated and we're so okay with being a lesser version of ourselves, is because we don't have people there to inspire us necessarily. Like people aren't willing to help others, or just get caught up in that positive wake, because it's easier for us to just find the reason why we can't and find the reason why we don't, and have these built-in excuses and these alibis as to why we can't achieve. It's this great, warm, fuzzy excuse, rather than, you know what, I can be legitimately happy. I can keep working for it, rather than, it's okay, it's good enough, and, well, don't judge me and don't push me.
Again, going back to the community that we have here, I think it's essential being the priority that we foster to those people, because 99.9% of the people that walk in here have no aspirations to make it into the CrossFit Games, right? They walk in here because they have a need, and that need is they want to feel better about themselves, right? Versus a commercial gym like a Globo gym, where everybody's kind of got their headphones in, and we've kind of taught ourselves that if you see a new face, that you personally go to that person and shake their hand and introduce yourself. And the coaches do a great job of doing that, introducing that person and having them let them know a little bit about themselves. And they just feel welcomed. So yeah, that's essential.
People have a difficult time being vulnerable,
Right.
right? So they feel that they need to improve themselves just to get to the point where they can go to like a gym, right? Get in shape before I go to a CrossFit gym. When going to the gym is good enough, man. It'll happen there.
Sure.
So how do you individually work on that for yourself and being where you're not sure with yourself, and then also as a coach and encouraging people who might not want to go to the gym or feel comfortable after day one?
So for myself, if I'll use the example of if I'm teaching a particular subject at the gym, I know that, and if I know that there's some level, I mean, there's always going to be some level of, you could always know more, right? Be more comfortable with the subject, but there's a performance gap, right, of where you need to be, right, and what we actually do. Whereas I'm telling a person that first person that they come in for the first time and feel like they need to go somewhere else, whether it's like your traditional Globo gym. It's every movement that we do in here, whether it's a snatch or clean and jerk, there's a multitude of modifications. And I tell every person that has that I guess excuse of why they're not starting off is that everybody starts here at the bottom, right? Whether it's, we have people that have played collegiate sports to people that have never worked out in their lives. So we kind of got all spectrums of athletic backgrounds or fitness backgrounds. So that puts them at ease.
What is something that you never thought you'd be good at, but you consider yourself at least proficient at it now?
I would say speaking in front of a large group of people. I was completely terrified when in high school and in college when I would have to do presentations on a certain subject. But I think the more and more you do, that's just with anything, and the more and more you do a certain thing, you just get comfortable. So I would say public speaking. I've spoken in front of people, I would say groups of 100 people to a small group of 2 people. So, and I take the same approach.
How were you after that first one, the first time you were up in front of 100 or so people? Was it confidence? Was it self-doubt? Was it like half and half? But where were you at?
Well, it was a completely different topic. When I was in front of a group of 100 people, this was actually for work. I did a presentation on safety in the workplace, specifically for ag, and specifically for the strawberry industry in the Santa Cruz and Watsonville area. So it's a completely different subject than I would do in a CrossFit class. And it was in Spanish, so completely different. But it was, it was super important that I prepared myself I'm talking months in advance. And obviously, anytime you know your subject, there's going to be a level of comfort. And I really didn't struggle because I felt like I was on. I knew the subject. And I do a pretty good job of keeping or making it interactive. with people and asking questions in the audience. And when that happens, people just stir up a conversation, and that just puts me at complete ease.
Mm-hmm. Thinking about stuff that you're good at, I think is important to do. Not to develop your ego so that where that's out of control, but I think it encourages you to then go out and push yourself into new areas. Because you look back at areas that you improved in, thought, man, I never thought I'd be able to do this, but I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so, hey, let's get into something else here. Because look how we did before. You find that things kind of snowball in a positive way once you test yourself and you do okay. And so, all right, hey, let's test ourselves again. You find that's happened for you?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it does a lot for your ego, just taking small little victories. I mean, a while ago, I purchased a calendar, and it has a day-to-day task, and just the sensation I feel when you're crossing stuff off, whether it's a small little task or a big task. So there's a sense of optimism and realization that you have accomplished something. And I've taken that approach to on just like day-to-day stuff, whether it's learning a new subject or like nutrition. Nutrition is, I would say, is probably one of my weaknesses when it comes to teaching it, which is why I've delegated that over to one of my coaches, Kelsey. So, no.
How long do you think you should feel good about that? Because if you end up feeling really proud for too long, you can then just sit back and think, gosh, look what I did, and live off that for too long. So how long do you think you need to keep things fresh and keep moving and keep growing so you accomplish this? Excellent. And not just sit back and think, man, 5 years ago I did this. That was great.
Yeah. I think that's often people's pitfall is just writing that, like you see a lot of people that are 10 years past their graduation in high school and they're still living in the past, right? I think that's one good example. But I think it's important to ride that positive wave. The approach I take with the business is I ride off of the positive stuff, but it's also important to use like fear and be paranoid at the same time on what, new things, new classes I need to implement, or new training I need to go to for my own personal knowledge that I can share to the members here. So I think it should be a short-lived victory, but to just cherish it in the moment. I mean, it's. I think when we went out fishing in Alaska, I think we rode that when Brennan caught that king salmon, and I think he still talks about it, and that's his.
Oh, yeah.
He still talks about it. I don't know how much
Slayer.
that thing. Yeah, the king slayer.
Yeah.
I don't know what the perfect answer is. I mean, 2 days, a week, but it's important to use that positivity, moving on to the next subject. But there could be a good balance of fear and positivity there.
Yeah.
To move you on to the next task, keep you on your toes.
Yeah, I think you have to appreciate what you did, but not sit back too long.
Yeah.
You're mentioning fear in there a little bit. And so many of these issues have two different sides that it's just a war of semantics. So where you want to eliminate your stress and you want to eliminate your fear.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the other side of that's like, no, you don't want to eliminate stress and fear because that means that you're not doing anything that's pushing yourself.
Exactly.
And you've reached some sort of simplistic complacency in which you're not going to live and grow.
Yeah.
So how do you balance your fear and your stress to where it's a good stress that's moving you forward rather than a bad stress that's making you unhealthy?
Yeah. Yeah, bad stress I think happens when you don't actually have. I mean, if you set yourself a goal or um, something that you want to accomplish, I think it's important to have an action plan, whether it's a short term goal, a long term goal, um, and be reasonable with yourself on something that's attainable, whether it's short term or long term, and taking the small little victories on your way to that accomplishing that goal. Um, the this test that I was reading about was about two professors that took an exam, and they took the final results, and the people that scored the worst on the exam were socially more confident. And I think where it correlates there is people that aren't necessarily socially so confident have a little bit of a sense of a fear that they need to work a little bit harder. Right? I think there's a correlation there.
What's kind of your growth mindset versus your fixed mindset? The fixed mindset is, oh, I'm good, I'm smart, this is going to be easy. So if it's not, then, I'm not, well, I don't know. Whereas the growth mindset is, this is something that can be learned. I can figure this out. I need to engage and make this happen.
Right.
Have you read that Carol Dweck book?
The what? Sorry.
Fixed or Mindset by Carol Dweck? Have you read that?
No, I have not. No.
I think we've talked about some of the principles a couple times. It's a pretty sound book. What are you reading currently?
I'm reading. I've been reading a lot of novels actually lately. I was on a big like personal growth thing for the past like 2 years or so, and I kind of got a little bit over it, and I've been reading a lot of in Spanish actually, some old school like Garcia Marquez type stuff, more romantic novels.
I think the personal growth stuff, I was the same thing. About 2 years of just really good personal growth stuff, which made some great changes in my life. But then it ultimately comes down to whether or not you're going to apply it. Like you can read the same idea in 5, 6, 7, 30 different books, but if you're not applying it, nothing's happened. So
yeah, I mean, the old saying is, what is it, like knowledge is power, but without action is like not knowing at all. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's cool to read, tell people, going back to the whole like virtual signaling. It's cool to tell people that you're reading all these personal growth books, but you're not applying it. Right?
Yeah, and then to be able to quote something that someone wrote, I've been taught this since it's senior quote time of the year when, all these quotes that kids are Googling, and adults are the same way. We find a quote that we like, that's, oh, this is totally my quote. But if you're not like living it, if it's not on the tip of your tongue, if it's not evident in your actions, it's not your quote. It's just something that you really like.
Yeah. Do you have one?
So I've read a lot of American history, U.S. Revolutionary War history about Revolutionary War and stuff. It's super interesting, but it's a nice change of pace for some of that, it's history. I was curious about history, but I never thought I'd just be banging out books or reading books about it. So,
I know. Do you have a personal quote that you live and breathe by?
A couple they're kind of paraphrased, but "Live a Good Story" from Donald Miller. He mentions that no one would ever go watch a movie in which a guy fixes the windshield wipers on his Volvo, and like no one wants to watch a story in which nothing happens. And so our lives are the same way. If we don't end up living a life that's a good story that no one would watch, it's not to entertain other people, but characters grow. They have to want something, and they have to do things to achieve that. And if we're not doing that, then we're not going to feel there's much of a purpose in our life.
Right.
Which is why we adopt bad stories for ourselves, because at least something's happened. Well, oftentimes it's bad and it's immediate gratification. And then also, this one, it can sound kind of weird, but this one I think about a lot is, what is better because of me?
Interesting.
And it's not a negative, oh, nothing's better, no one cares. It's kind of a, what can I do today to make something better. I'm not going to know whether or not it's better or not, but just the way, maybe how I treat someone, or maybe I can do something that's productive. And is anything better because of me, or is anything cynical, angry, mean? And that kind of comes with the self-awareness we started off with.
That's a good one. A while ago, one of my old professors gave us some tip of advice that said, do something nice for somebody every day on a daily basis, whether it's picking up the phone and just checking in on them, how they're doing, or what have you. I mean, you can think of the most minimal thing for somebody, right? To do something nice for them on a daily basis, and then eventually good things will happen to you. Right?
And do it because you want to.
Yeah, exactly. Not expecting it, obviously, right? But it's
yeah.
I mean, I feel really, I get the warm and fuzzies when I do something nice for somebody. As cheesy as it sounds.
Yeah.
It's it's rewarding. Yeah.
Yeah. Our buddy Matt was talking about how the reward that he gets for the things that he does is in how the community then treats his family, his wife and his kids, and how, Matt's a good dude, and Matt's and so, that's Matt's wife, and they're going to be nice to his wife. So how it's going to echo somewhere. And
absolutely, yeah.
There's so many different quotes that mention that talk about that. But when you start practicing it, when you challenge yourself daily to, is anything going to be better than me, or because of me, or is it going to be, am I just adding to all the misery and all the cynical and all it's so divided, and all you're doing is just driving that wedge deeper because you feel like you're entitled because you just tell it like it is, or, I wouldn't be offended. So, are things better because of me, or are things more miserable? I think that's kind of I like that one, and it kind of tries to keep me honest, be kind.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was a good one, Matt. The Matt episode. That was good.
No,
I like the feedback that he gave to the folks at was it the New York Cafe?
Yeah.
Right? Whether something wasn't right with that dish, and I took that one and it's like, I really wish somebody would tell me something, in my business, if something wasn't right, or if they wish that it was be a certain way, right? I'm all ears for that, and I'm open to that, because ultimately they're the ones that keep these doors open.
Yeah. Well, that's the type of person who's going to come up to you. Some people are just going to complain all the time for the sake of complaining. Whereas that person who has developed that integrity, that honor, that if they're gonna, I gotta make this comment here. I'm not the type of person who just stirs it up for the sake of doing it. So you're gonna take that to heart about, hey, Chuy, this is what's going on. Maybe think about this. You're gonna take that to heart, and you're gonna thank that person because, that's legit. You're a good person. This is out of love rather than, just to be mean.
Yeah, I mean, and it's important that you take that as positive feedback, right? Because you could also take the approach of like, hey, screw you, like, this is my business, I run it the way I want it, right?
Exactly.
That's how you take that.
Yeah. If you spend a lot of time, a lot of money into doing something, and you find out that it's not good enough, that it's wrong, you just want to be like, well, whatever, you're wrong, and you get real defensive rather than,
you try it or something.
Yeah. Any quotes for you?
The quote that I love, I mean, it's not really a quote, it was just 2 words, but is, I think I've said it before, is win everything, right? Whether it's the smallest task that you have to do for that day, right? Or something huge. And I try to, being a father, right? Win everything. Win at being a father, win at being a coach or a business person, what have you. Win everything. And the other one is, I think it kind of goes in line with the self-awareness stuff. It's not necessarily a quote, but it's a Japanese word that I've kind of fallen in love with, and I wrote it down in I'm actually at the gym right now. It's in the office. And it's have you heard of the word? It's Japanese, kodawari.
No, I haven't.
Kodawari, and it's I wrote the meaning of it, and I'll read it off to you. It says, a sincere, unwavering focus on what you're doing with the goal of making it perfect, while simultaneously knowing that perfection is impossible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's with anything. I mean, you going out on a hunt, right? Is falling in love with the process and knowing that ultimately you're not always gonna come out with a deer or a bear or whatever it is that you're hunting, right? But I'm striving to every day that you go out there on the hunt and making it worthwhile and a learning experience and falling in love with that whole process.
Yeah.
Making yourself better.
I think it was a Jay Ferrugia podcast I was listening to, and the guy said, never peak.
Never peak.
Yeah, never peak. And so he said, like, the peak of his, or the guy that he had on was like, he wants the peak of his existence to be just before he dies. It means like at every stage of his life, he is getting better and improving. It doesn't mean that he'll be at his best physically at that point, but he will be peaking within his context in every aspect. So it's not a slow decline from something. Everything, like you said, you're winning and you're crushing it on all levels at all times, and having that mindset, knowing you're not going to win all the time. Having that pursuit, and that's what it's about.
Yeah, I think the moment you tell yourself that you learned everything that you need to learn on a specific subject, I think that's the moment that you've lost. I think, for lack of better words.
Yeah,
you could always learn more.
Then your ego takes over, and you
get really fat and happy with where you're at.
And selfish, yeah. Well, any closing thoughts? I know it's getting a little bit late down there in California on a Monday. You got family to tend to. So, any closing thoughts, man?
Some closing thoughts is I need to get back to Alaska.
Yeah.
Every now and then I think about how important I think it is, especially for a person that lives in not just the metropolitan area, but we get so caught up with the day-to-day stuff, and being outdoors does so much for the soul, and I'm long overdue on whether it's a hiking trip or how nurturing it was taking that week in Alaska. So I need that soon.
Yeah, well, even for us up here, we start to get spoiled by the Ketchikan, so it'll be nice to get down to Wyoming and experience the rest of the world and see. It's a different type of beauty, and you get so caught up in Alaska is the beauty, and nothing else can be good because everything else is ruined by people and by pollution and by highways and cars, and it'll be nice to get down there and see that I don't have to be so cynical about the lower 48. So thanks a lot for being on again, man. We'll take care.
Thanks, man.